Thank you for attending the 2020 Sunstone Digital Symposium, session 236, titled Folksong of the Fringe. The audio from this session will be available for purchase at sunstone.org after the symposium. The video recording of this session will be available in the Whova app for the remainder of 2020. Please write your questions in the Whova app and we will share them at the end with this presenter. At Sunstone, we are making it a goal to build a community that allows for many ways for people to express their faith. Our tagline is, "There's more than one way to Mormon." We invite you to help us build a community where all paths are given space to be better understood. Please support us in our mission by making a donation and subscribing at sunstone.org. About this presentation, the author writes, "Since my teenage years, I've been interested in songwriting as a way to document my experiences. Religion was a big part of my life in my early years while growing up in a Mormon family and serving a mission in the early 1980s. Faith, doubt, rebellion, heresy, mysticism, ecumenicism, and universalism all have their expression in my songs. I studied music composition at BYU, and I've written instrumental music for small ensembles and also worship music such as hymn arrangements and choral music, but my songs, only my songs, will be featured in this session." David Harris is a sixth-generation Utahn, descended from Emer Harris, the brother of Martin Harris. He is an avid consumer of Mormon fiction and is active in the Association of Mormon Letters, where he has submitted numerous book reviews and served as a judge for the fiction category. I'll now turn the time over to David Harris.
Thank you, Cheryl. Hold on a sec. Okay, here we go. Got video. Okay, hi, I'm Dave, and I just want to share my screen here. I need to do a couple of settings here, and then we'll be ready to go. Okay. All right. Right at the outset, I want to acknowledge a couple of people. The first one is David Pace, who's a really great personal essay writer. I really enjoy his writing, so I recently asked him if he could help me to get more familiar with the form and recommend some other authors. Effectively, what this is a personal essay just with songs. And I also want to acknowledge Isaac England Asplin, my nephew, who did the video of these songs and also contributed a lot of musical material, including vocals and other instruments. I couldn't have done this without him. Since it's a Zoom session, there was just no way around doing videos, and he came through for me in a big way. The songs you'll be hearing today form a song cycle entitled Folksong of the Fringe. The oldest of them was written in 1974, and 3 or 4 of them were written just this year. So they span a period of several decades and represent a number of different periods of my life as my thinking about faith has evolved and been changing. I was born in Provo, and I attended Provo City Schools for all but 2 years of my public education and BYU after that. Pretty much everyone I knew growing up was Mormon. There were, of course, a few that weren't, but I didn't know who they were, and I didn't spend much time thinking about it. Bottom line is that Mormonism to kids growing up in Provo in those days was sort of like water to a fish. It was so ubiquitous in our everyday lives as to be invisible. My fascination with music started when I was a student at Fair Junior High School in downtown Provo in the mid-1970s. My buddy Brian Chapman and I signed up for a folk guitar class. We wrote a couple of cheesy songs together, dubbing ourselves Brianna Love and Davida Peace. This was at the tail of the Woodstock area, the tail end of the Woodstock era, and the Summer of Love was still very much in the public consciousness. At some point along about the 8th grade, we figured out that we could walk downtown to the public library after school and still get back in time to catch the late bus home. Provo had a Carnegie library. The audiovisual section in the basement had an astounding variety of music. So at least once a week or so, we'd come trudging back to the school building, lugging record albums we had checked out to take home. Our appetites were voracious. We'd sample anything from pop rock to prog rock, folk rock to bluegrass, jazz to classical, Spanish flamenco, French expressionism, German romanticism, Russian balalaika orchestras, modern electronic music, and virtually anything else we could get our hands on. We'd pass right by the seminary building on our way back to the bus. And on one occasion, I recall our seminary teacher, Brother Williams, smiling and giving me a thumbs up and shouting out across the lawn, "Beethoven, good for you," when he spied me carrying a copy of Bob Dylan's Blonde on Blonde. What do you know, I thought to myself as I glanced down at the photo of Dylan with his large afro. He really does sort of look like Beethoven. I chuckled to myself, feeling like I had gotten away with something. It was in that downstairs room at the Provo Public Library that I discovered the music of Marvin Payne, who has since become a sort of local legend. On one of the record sleeves, I read about him walking door to door in Utah County, selling his record albums to whoever was willing to buy one. He sang in a folk style, and his songs were about topics that were familiar to me: Mormon pioneers, family, Utah, the Wasatch Mountains. Billy Jenkins was a song that particularly captured my imagination. It was about a man back in pioneer days who'd been tasked with carrying a community's tithing up to Salt Lake City. He was already underway when a winter storm hit unexpectedly. Every time our family drove over the point of the mountain in our old station wagon on the way to Salt Lake and points north to visit relatives, I thought about that guy on his horse in a snowstorm 100 years ago or more, struggling to get home after his important delivery. Payne's influence inspired a song about the Book of Mormon called Land of Promise, which is one of the first songs I ever wrote, maybe the first. I believe that would have been around 1974. I'd like to play that for you right now. Here it is, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Well, it came down on the Saturday, 'cause the stars wouldn't have it, the weather say. The young man came from northern frontiers with a book that was still our peers. And it told of a man and his son in the Holy Land, ancient Jerusalem. The man saw on a hill in a dream by the young impending doom. Gathered together his wife, sons, and daughters, fled with all haste to the great wilderness. Time as they wandered, they came to great waters, which carried them forth to the land of promise. So they sailed on a ship. It's stuck. And you can't hear the I apologize. Apparently there are technical difficulties. I'm sorry about that. I think I got kicked off the Zoom thing is what happened. Can you hear me? Oh, okay.
Yes, we can still hear you.
Apologies. I'm trying to figure out what's wrong here. This all worked when I tested it yesterday and the day before. So please hang on just a second here and I'll see if I can figure out what's going on. Okay. Is it there now? Do not understand that. That page isn't even open right now. Well, that's that right there. I don't get it. I don't. Let me try starting it over. Can you hear it?
Yes, we're hearing it.
I'm not sure what to do.
It seems to be cutting in and out. At
I'm gonna
times we
stop
get a
sharing
really
for
good
a second
audio,
here.
but
See if we can get back and see if Cheryl has any ideas.
it
Cheryl?
seems to be cutting in and out. At times we're getting a really good audio, but then it cuts out.
And you're not seeing the video at all?
No.
Let me just try to start that whole sharing process over again. That is so weird. Okay, so that should be up. That should be the one that I'm sharing now. And I should be able to go here. And those two settings are activated. What happens if I click on Show Video Panel? I'll try it and see.
Yeah, try it.
And now Hide Video Panel. Maybe that's it. Let me just start this song and see what happens now. Still not coming up.
Can you do the Show Video Panel and then start it?
Yeah, hold on. Okay, so Show Video Panel. Okay.
And then start. Oh, now it's gone.
Now I'll start it.
I saw the video panel for a minute, but then it went off before you started it.
Oh. Hide floating meeting controls. So I have share computer sound enabled. I have optimized share for full screen video clip enabled, and that worked in the past.
Okay. Try starting it again now that I see that little screen.
Okay.
Oh, it went off.
Shoot.
Can you share the video with it on, with the sound on?
What do you mean sound on?
Let's see.
I wonder if I could, I'll try one thing here. I'll try choosing a different screen to share and see if that share. Okay. Down to my other screen and share that screen and just see if by chance that will do it. So now I'm going to share my screen. Where to do that? Oh, maybe right here. Oh, here we go. Okay, share screen. Okay. But it comes up there. So I need to, okay. How do I get that to start down there? I guess I need to minimize it here. I saw it somewhere. Oh, here we go. Okay. Is that working?
Audio is much better. Oh, that might work.
Let me try to maximize it. Oh, that's minimized.
With a book that was.
I see the video screen now, but I don't see anything on it.
Let's see if I can do show video panel now. Oh, that's just that. I don't know what to try.
Okay, I sent a message to our technical specialist, and he should be on pretty soon here.
Okay.
Let's see if he can help.
All right. I wonder if I should, nothing to do but just wait here for a minute. So they say. I apologize to everybody. I had this all tested and it was beautifully, and now for some reason not.
All right, I'll send a message to Grace too to see if she can help us.
Okay. Sharing screen works differently. It used to say screen 1 or 2, and this morning it's showing me different. It's almost like I'm sharing not a screen, but a window. I wonder if that's a problem. Let me try something here. Try starting the video before I share, and I'll just pause it here.
Okay.
And then try to share and see if it's screw that window, but it doesn't, does it? I'll just try again here and see what's there. Very strange. So it looks like everything a black screen.
Yeah, I'm seeing what you're seeing, just a black screen.
I guess while waiting to hear the audio, we could at least play the audio. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, okay, let's just play the audio and at least to hear that is the okay.
Okay, I'm not getting real good audio from you though.
Well, it came about on a Sunday, 'cause the stars wouldn't have it.
Getting better when I was sharing the screen. I can't imagine how that would change it. If that's the case, maybe I'll go ahead and see. I'll drag this down here. And then there again. Great. Share app. Share can sound optimized. There's an advanced thing here. Computer on only, but then you'll be able to hear me talking, right? Content from camera, that's not it. It's this L thing. It's for actual shares, I think, and sending them across. Your internet connection is stable. Could that be part of the problem?
That could be part of the problem. I don't know.
Obviously, I guess it could. Huh?
I'm not getting your audio, like when you're speaking, I'm not getting you in real clear.
Maybe I can work on that for a minute. I think there's a way to, let's see. Maybe here I put on here. Oh yeah, I see. Is that better for the sound now?
I'm not seeing anything, and I'm not hearing much of anything.
Seems like this is the best one. Can you hear me now? Not very loud.
You are cutting in and out.
I'm under. I think that what we may have to do is I did I did a whole Zoom recording just and I just have to do that again. I made a couple of changes and then
David,
post the whole thing.
David,
Yeah.
could you try going out of the Zoom call and then coming back in?
That's a good idea. I'll do.
Okay.
now.
We apologize for these technical difficulties. We're trying to get Trace or Grace Poole to come and help us out with them. So hang on and we will see what we can do. Right now we're waiting for Dave to come back in. There he is. Okay, there you
Hi.
are.
So I'm back. So, okay, so let's just try to share now. Share
Okay.
screen. And I'll probably have to do that. Oh, well, now it's showing the video. And now
Oh, there we go.
I think we may be in business here now. I just have to activate a couple of settings here, and I think we'll be in business. Okay, so hopefully we can go now. Let's see, is that working?
That's working. Great.
Okay, should have just done that in the first place. Thanks for thinking of that.
Well, it came about on a Saturday, 'cause the stars wouldn't have it no other way. A young man came from northern frontiers with a book that would still all our fears. And it told of a man and his sons in the Holy Land, ancient Jerusalem. The man saw on a hill in a dream fiery omens of impending doom. He gathered together his wife, sons, and daughters and fled with all haste to the great wilderness. In time as they wandered, they came to great waters which carried them forth to their land of promise. So they sailed on a ship across the sea to inherit the blessings of liberty in a land promised them from above, for as long as they'd serve God in love. But the prophets did tell of a time when the people would cease to be led by God. They foretold of its utter demise at the hands of an unruly Lord. They strove to be righteous and follow the word. Their leaders preached peace and they gave up the sword. In turn they were blinded with pride and ambition and gave up their right to the land of promise. Land of promise. And what is the point of this sobering tale? Why strive to be righteous if we're bound to fail? If we're doomed to dwindle in disbelief anyway, why chase this unholy grail?
Okay, so moving ahead, fast forward to 2006, some 30 years later. I had just returned from a 4-year stint in Kuwait where I'd been teaching English at a local university. I had no idea what I was going to do next. I just knew that I was ready to move on to something else. So at the invitation of a friend and former bandmate, I moved to Kansas City, where I signed up to substitute teach. On the days I didn't end up getting a teaching job, I liked to go over to nearby Independence to explore the church history sites. I particularly enjoyed attending the daily prayer for peace at the Community of Christ Temple, where each day's noon prayer is devoted to a different country throughout the course of each year. Now I want to tell you about a trip out to Adamandayaman, the subject of this next song. It was a cool, rainy day as I headed out, stopping along the way to visit a few other sites along the way. Because of the gloomy weather and because the summer crowds had all gone home by that time of year, the traffic was light. I saw hardly anyone out and about as I made my way home. As I made my way north along the back roads. All that stillness put me into an introspective mood, and the refrain of the song you're about to hear began to go through my head as I drove along. Looks like I've lost my screen sharing. Cheryl, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, it said the screen sharing turned off. Let's see.
Share screen again.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to get this up here, and then I'll share the screen again. Let's see if that worked. We may be back to where we were. Okay, here comes Adamandayaman. Let's try it and see if it works. Can you hear that?
Not just very faintly, and we're not getting a video. We have one of our questioners is telling us that bandwidth is the problem. They say sharing video and music is challenging on Zoom.
So you can't really hear the song, Cheryl?
No.
It just seems like the best option at this point might be to just record it and post it, do you think?
I think that would be a great option.
No,
Can you tell us a little bit about, maybe you can give us your little, talk about how you did each song, and then we could at least hear a little bit about the songs.
Sounds like a good idea.
How you wrote them.
That sounds like a good idea. I'll just, since you can't really hear this very well anyway, I'll turn it off. So yeah, so I think around 2006 is where I started to get the idea in my head that I would like to do an album or some kind of collection of songs about, about my experience with religion and with the LDS Church. And so that's when...
Excuse me, David, excuse me for a minute. Could you bring your screen share down and then we can see you talking?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'll just turn off the screen share.
Thanks.
Stop share. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, is that working?
Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, so that's when I was living briefly in Missouri in the Kansas City area and visiting the church history sites. I think that somehow kind of sparked my imagination and got me interested in writing songs about some of these sites and about my experience with Mormonism in general. And that's where the Adamandayaman song, the germ of it was kind of born there. I didn't actually finish the song till this year. And then one that I was going to play at the end of the presentation, No Man Knows, a song about Joseph Smith, same kind of thing. The refrain just started kind of going through my head, and I knew that I wanted to turn that into a song. And so I'll talk briefly about Adamandayaman now. Going out there was a really interesting experience. Like I say, it was just, it was a cool day, and there was no one out and about. I drove through a couple of small towns on my way out there, and just nobody. And so I got into a really introspective mood. But I want to comment about the, I don't know that I really necessarily believe in a literal Adam and Eve, but the whole idea that you could go to the place where humanity started, you just get caught up in that notion. And it was really like a pilgrimage as I was driving out there. I felt like I was going to a really important place. And, you know, in the LDS Church, we often get so caught up in tangible goals that we forget about the importance of introspection. And especially when human beings become adults, you know, we get caught up in our lives and we tend to lose our sense of wonder. And plus, the church is constantly telling us to avoid the mysteries, right? And yet the idea of visiting the actual place where the very first humans lived registered vividly on my imagination, something which doesn't happen frequently in my normal responsibility-plagued adult life. I'm sure other people can relate to that. You know, and it was just a really, really memorable day to go out there. And then I was going to tie that into another song. That was in 2006. And then in 2011, when I was contemplating getting married, I started to think about that, started to feel that same sense of mystery, you know, and it inspired another song that I sang to Jane at our wedding, and you'll hear that presumably in a recording later. It's called When the Stars Fall Down from Heaven One by One, and it's about just a contemplation of what comes next, you know, because LDS weddings are for time and all eternity. And although Jane and I weren't actually married in the temple at that time, contemplating marriage from close up did inspire me to give a lot of thought to the Mormon concept of eternity. And when you hear the song, you'll notice it's made up entirely of questions. And I think all those questions can be boiled down to just one. Are we in for something good after we die, or something bad? And I'm an optimist by nature. So when I read the words of Paul in 1 Corinthians, which say, "Eye hath not seen nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love him," I just assume that we're in for something better than we can imagine, whatever that might be. And I'm not terribly troubled by the idea that I don't know or understand exactly what it will be. And then from there, I was going to transition to another song. And I was going to suggest that maybe the real reason that church leaders counsel us not to deal with the mysteries is because they don't want us to get too comfortable with questions. Because if we do, maybe we'll get to the point where we even question the essentials. And so this next song was going to address that. Doubt is such an important part of the personal faith journey. So it's unfortunate that we're so often discouraged from exploring it. Referring back to the fish and water simile I employed earlier when I was talking about my childhood growing up in Provo, I believe it's necessary to view a group or ideology both from within and from without in order to really understand that. And you know, the Amish get that. They have this tradition in Amish culture called rumspringa, which means, literally, it means jumping around. But what it means is when you're a teenager, you're going to make a decision. Am I going to stick with this really God-focused life? Or am I going to go out in the world and make a different life for myself? And I think, unfortunately, what happens from what I've read is they go out and they hot rod and they have, you know, crazy sex and do crazy things. And it's more like being a juvenile delinquent than it is really examining your life inside or outside, unfortunately. But I like this idea that you would take a break from your religious life and look at it from the outside and say, is this really for me? Is this what I want to do? So the next song is called What Do We Really Know? And it's just kind of a fun little ditty that I wrote way back in my early years. It's a ditty that challenges the whole notion that we can ultimately really know anything at all, let alone whether the church is true or whether God exists. And I think they're valid questions that we're sometimes afraid to ask. But personally, I have a hard time imagining how or why God would be offended by questions like that. And then I was really looking forward to this next part. I was going to talk about how, well, I'll just read the script. Changing the subject here for a minute. Have you ever noticed how when a person loses interest in the church, people always assume it's because they are offended by something that happened in their ward? In my experience, offensive things happen in church all the time, but it's rare when that's what actually leads to a person backing away, at least from what I've seen. Nevertheless, sexism, among other problems, continues to be prevalent in the church, whether it's husbands who use the priesthood as a weapon against their wives, or vice versa. The opposite happens as well. And I was going to share a story from a friend, but I think I'll leave that for the time being. So anyway, basic idea is, cutting to the chase, that this song expresses resentment that I felt in trying to date and feeling like women sometimes would hold my priesthood over my head. You're not a good enough priesthood holder, that kind of stuff. So let me just quickly explain that in order to adequately capture the thick resentment expressed in the song, I went electric with it. And I was going to talk about how Dylan went electric at the Newport Folk Festival in 1965. And I'm sure you've all heard the stories of the boos and hisses that rained down on Dylan from the crowd, as he, like the money changers in the temple of old, proceeded to defile their sacred shrine of traditional folk music with profane wails and caterwauling of electric guitars. Dylan himself captured this sentiment well years later in a song called Senor, Tales of Yankee Power, where he sings the following lines: Senor, let's overturn these tables and disconnect these cables. This place don't make sense to me no more. Can you tell me what we're waiting for, Senor? And so then I say here, I'm counting on you guys to be a little more open-minded than that apparently unsophisticated Newport Folk Festival crowd was 55 years ago this week. And then I was going to cue up In Your World. And I set up at an empty amphitheater in my neighborhood, the local library branch at Foothill Anderson here in Salt Lake City. There's a really nice little amphitheater, and they have a summer concert series there where you can come and sit and listen to people play. So we went up there and I set up my electric guitar and got all plugged in and had a microphone, and Isaac kind of circled around me slowly while I sang this electric song that's kind of a little bit of a vendetta, or anyway, just sort of a kind of a rage against the unfairness of that whole situation. Okay, and I hope I'm not boring you guys to death, but I'm going to talk about the title song here for a minute. You may be wondering about a possible connection between Orson Scott Card's 1989 short story collection, Folk of the Fringe. I've got a copy right here. I think this is probably the only edition that was ever published. This came out in 1989. There's really little to no connection. Both involve the LDS community and life on the fringes of it, but the similarities pretty much end there. And by the way, Card's Fringe is a geographic designation, whereas the one I'm referring to in this song is more of an ideological one. And I'm just going to read to you the description I was going to use to introduce the song. And back to Card for a minute. I chose the title as a nod to an inventive and memorable book of fiction rooted in the religious community in which I was raised, and which continues to inform much of my identity and thinking. And then on that topic, we come now to the Folk Song of the Fringe, the title song, which is performed in the style of a gospel hymn, of the kind you might hear at a tent revival or an old camp meeting. And we were just standing outside clapping and singing. And I had a melodica, and I played a little melody on a melodica during the chorus. And basically the idea of the song is it celebrates the restoration of individual freedom that you attain when you break away from a particularly strict tradition. And that might be a religious tradition, or it might be any kind of strict cultural tradition. It was kind of a celebration of freedom. And, you know, I would try to actually sing that. I did try it live, but I noticed in the recording later that the voice cut in and out a lot. And I think it's because when you sing loud into your computer mic, Zoom doesn't know what to do, and it confused it. So that was Folk Song of the Fringe. Actually, maybe I could share the lyrics with you, though. Why don't I do that? I'll just pull those up really quick. Folk Song of the Fringe is right here in this folder. Song, Folk Song. Yeah, here we go. So, and Cheryl, just interrupt me when it comes to the point where we need to quit. There's safety in the middle, maybe, comfort in the known, but I prefer to sit along the edges on my own. It's quiet here, the birds sing, no one tells me what to think, or looks askance at my long hair or my iced coffee drink. I'm thinking I might even grow a beard. The prophet speaks for God, so you must listen to the man. That's what they say, but I don't know, that smacks of Satan's plan. I'd rather make my own mistakes and afterward repent. From what I understand, that's why the good Lord Jesus sent. Their gift to us was freedom. Let it ring. That gives you kind of a general flavor of it, and I'll go back now to my talk. And then after that, I moved into, I actually wrote a song called Grief and Gratitude, kind of to commemorate, to align myself with the topic of the conference this year. And I say about that, as many of you know, separating yourself from your religion, your religious tradition isn't all fun and games. Friends and family aren't always supportive, and it can be a long and lonely transition. The theme of the symposium this year is grief and gratitude, and that's also the name of this next song. And so I talk about how, there's a grief, you lose a parent, which I did recently, and you have to deal with that grief. But if you can remember the good times about that and maintain your gratitude, there's a sense of grace that comes. So I kind of added in a third element. There's grief, there's gratitude, and there's grace. And then later in the song, I talk about, your parents raise you in this religious tradition, and it can be really heart-wrenching to separate yourself from it. But on some level, at some point, you have to realize that it doesn't work for you. And but if you can remain grateful for the good experiences you got through it, and I have to tell you, growing up in the Pleasant View First Ward in Provo, Utah was a blessed experience for me. I have great friends that I'm still friends with. One of them sitting right in the next room, Kent Purdy. And so I don't regret at all being raised Mormon. And on some level, I'm actually even a believer, but I just don't, the church as an organization doesn't work for me. That's the bottom line. And I talk about that elsewhere in the talk. I'll talk briefly now about the next song, which is Wolves in Shepherd's Clothing, which is about predatory evangelizing. And this isn't so much about Mormonism as it is about sort of this American phenomenon, which is less and less American. Now you have like the Mooney Church is Korean, right? And you have Falun Gong in China. It's a kind of a common thing, this predatory evangelizing, and maybe Scientology is the worst, I don't know. But, it does kind of relate to Utah because we got to, look at the high rate of fraud in our state and look at the large number of MLMs that have taken up residence here. But I find it particularly galling when people with no scruples pose as spiritual giants. And, the Jim Bakkers and the Jimmy Swaggarts. And that's what this song, Wolves in Shepherd's Clothing, was about. I won't read the lyrics here. You'll have an opportunity to listen to the recording, but I'm particularly proud of that song. I think it addresses that phenomenon of taking advantage of widows and so that you can get yourself a jet plane and a mansion, things like that. I really think I hit the nail on the head with that song. And now I'll talk briefly about Black and White, which is a piano song. Wolves in Shepherd's Clothing and also Black and White, Black or White were both piano songs. And I look forward to when you'll be able to hear those. But Black or White, it's kind of a declaration of independence, but it's also an ecumenical song, it's a universal song. Part of the words in the song are, life's an enigmatic venture. What does it mean? Anybody's guess is as good as yours, sir. And the sir part kind of refers to men in suits or boys in suits, missionaries or general authorities. I don't think you know any better answers than I do. But at the same time, I say in the song, someone's been telling you stories that just might be true. Sometimes a duck doesn't quack like a duck or much look like a duck. It's a duck just the same. I'm not afraid of your creed, and I give you every right to believe what you believe, and as long as you don't try to take away my right to believe. So that's what that Black or White song is about, and it's in 3 short parts. It's a little bit of a medley, and I actually quite like that one as well. And then actually we come to the last song, which is No Man Knows. And I talked about how I had a short sojourn in Missouri in the fall of 2006, and talked about how the refrain to Adamon Diamond started to go through my head as I was driving out to the site to see it. Something really similar happened with this song. I got this No Man Knows My History refrain going through my head, and thought, I've got to make that into a song. And it didn't actually become a full song until just this year, just a few weeks ago, in preparation for this event. But I saved it for last because whatever your opinion of Joseph Smith, his story is one of the most fascinating of all the stories encompassed by Christian and Mormon traditions, I think. And with that, I was going to come full circle by returning to the same guitar-based folk style of the first two songs. And so that was it. And I was going to move into questions from there. And I guess we can take some questions, Cheryl, if you think that's a good idea, or we can wait for the recording. Of course, at that point, we can't take questions. So maybe we have to take them now. What do you
let's take questions. Let's definitely take questions. Just wanted to tell you, Dave, that I really appreciated your and kind of felt the same kind of feelings with you relating folk history to your folk songs, especially Adamon Diamond. I remember going out there and not really believing in the, literal Adam, but still sort of looking for his altar and, and so I really loved you. You're talking about writing the songs, and I'm looking forward to hearing them as well. You've kept your audience, no one left.
Oh, great.
But there is someone that asked, is there a way we can get access to your music? Do you have a presence online, or is there anything we can listen to while we're waiting?
What I will do, I have a YouTube channel. And what I'll do today, and maybe I can, if you come back in here, you can see the chats in the Whova app if you come into this session, I think. So what I'll do is I'll post as many of those as I can in there, and then I'll post some links to them here in the chat section for this session. Does that work?
That's great. That's fabulous.
Okay. Thanks for your interest in them. I really appreciate that. I want to say one more thing about Adamon Diamond. It's funny that you have kind of these mixed feelings when you're going out there. And I read somebody else's account in Dialogue or somewhere about going out to Adamon Diamond, and they went out with their brother, and they had sort of the same kind of reverence, feeling of reverence mixed with kind of a jocular, one of them joked around. They're walking around singing, I walk today where Adam walked, and there's just kind of I don't know, there's just something about that site that really it makes an impression, but you can't help but laugh a little too, because it seems on one level it's just an absurd idea that you can actually know where the very first humans lived, I think. But anyway, let's.
But yes, so it does tug at your heartstrings. So one person asked, when you listen to your songs, which one stirs the strongest emotion from you?
Oh, these songs or just any songs?
I think yours they're talking about.
I think I'll give you two answers, and I think one of them is Wolves in Shepherd's Clothing. I can't help but feel a little bit of a, what's the word when you triumph? I kind of feel like I can't, the word's just not coming to me, but you feel this sort of vindictive feeling when you watch these, Bill, what's the guy's name that does Last Week Tonight, the British guy? He did a section on these people one time, and he started writing to a person who's asking for, send the $1 and then we'll send you back this blessing, and send us $10 and whatever, just this completely manipulative thing. So Bill, I can't think of what his name is, but anyway, he just kept it up and kept sending letters back and forth, and then he exposed it all on his show, and it was just so outrageous that you just can't help but feel outrage. And so I felt like somehow writing this song, I was able to push back, and that makes me feel good, the Wolves in Shepherd's Clothing song. And by the way, I was a member of, back before email really, or I mean before publicly available email, back in the early 90s, I was a student at Georgetown, and I got on a listserv group called Friends and Believers, which was a group of people who were kind of questioning the church, and some were more believing than others. But that's where that whole phrase, wolves in shepherd's clothing, came from. And way back then, I thought to myself, I have to use that in a song someday. And then the other one I would say is probably Adam on Diamond, just because I love a sense of mystery. And I guess I get that a little bit in the Joseph Smith song too. That song, I wrote the verses from the perspective in the third person, somebody who's looking at Joseph Smith's life, maybe in our time, and wondering, what was that all about? But then in the choruses, it's in the first person, trying to get into his head. And obviously I can't get into his head, but kind of thinking about the worries he might have had, and what his feelings were, and why he wanted to be a prophet. And was it just because he didn't want to be a poor and simple farm boy, and he figured that that was a way that he might be able to raise himself out and become, you know, a more prominent person and have a more interesting life than somebody who just did hard scrap farming. So yeah, those would probably be the ones I'd point to.
Oh, thank you. You know, for me, when you were telling us about the song that you wrote for your wedding or for your wife, when the stars fall down from heaven one by one, so romantic. That stirs emotion in me already before I've even heard it. So very cool.
That one actually is a very emotional one too. And I could read the lyrics to that if you wanted, or we can move on, but I'm willing to do that. If you want me to do that, let me pull that one up. Where are you? Yeah, here we go. It does have a little bit of apocalyptic, you know, end times stuff in it, but my focus really comes in the very end, where I say, will you still love me? Will you want to be with me for all time and all eternity? But here are the lyrics. When the stars fall down from heaven one by one, trailing wispy strands of stardust in their wake, when the darkness is complete, will we find the peace we seek, or will we simply cease to wonder and to be? Will the end of time's predictions all come true? Will the ground beneath our feet commence to quake? Will we suffer crushing heat? Will we lose our power of speech? Or will we find that all of a sudden we're free? And then here comes that part I referred to. Will you still love me? Will you want to be with me for all time and all eternity? Will benign divinities receive us, welcoming us back home? And then I do a harmonica solo, and I wrap up with these lines. When the good Lord calls this weary traveler home, tell me, will you miss me when I'm gone? And will we meet again some distant bright collab morn?
I love it.
That's
thanks. Awesome. Can't wait to hear it. Can't wait to hear it. Okay, we have a comment here by someone who says, when we lived in Missouri, there was a story that the Elders Quorum in Chillicothe, Missouri, had an annual project to haul rocks to the altar at Adam-on-Diamond for the people to get and take home. That made me laugh because I myself brought home a rock from Adam-on-Diamond. So, yeah, I was wondering, it might not have any rocks left after everyone visits.
Yeah, you know, when I went there, I had read about that, how I think already back in Joseph's time, people were taking rocks as souvenirs. So, you know, anybody that goes there today and thinks they're finding a rock that was actually there when Smith was there, I think is deceiving themselves. But I think it's a really interesting idea. Yeah, let alone from Adam, right?
Yeah.
And also, I think to myself, you know, wouldn't there be like maybe a good 50, 100, maybe 200 feet of sediment that had settled on top of any Garden of Eden site, especially since in the interim you had Noah's Ark, right? So, I mean, that covered it up. And so the idea that you could actually step on ground that Adam stepped on millennia ago, I think is kind of crazy, but still, you know, you get that feeling when you go there.
But still. Okay, well, I just wondered whether you have artists that inspire you as well as any church leaders that inspire you.
Okay. You mean like visual artists?
I was meaning more like singers.
Oh, yeah, ever since I have been a kid, um, I'm still a big fan of the people that I was a fan of as a kid, and I'm talking, the Beatles and their later solo careers. I particularly am fond of Paul McCartney, Elton John. When I was a kid in junior high school, I'd play Elton John songs on the piano, and I still remain a big, huge fan of him. And I even more nowadays when I listened to a David Sedaris uh, tribute to Elton John once about how, as a young gay person, it was so difficult for him to know how to interact with people and live his life. But Elton John was an inspiration to him because he was just out there being who he was, and that just makes me love Elton John all the more. But I think the one probably that I'd really point to is Paul Simon. Um, from the Simon and Garfunkel days way up until just his last album came out maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I've been I would have to say it's probably Paul Simon that has because he's unlike a lot of other songwriters, he's a true poet. And I feel like with my songs, with my lyrics, 1 in 10, maybe even 1 in 20 times do I really hit the level of true poetry. And I think that's true of a lot of even established singers and songwriters. Uh, the Paul Simon really does rise to the level of poetry, and there are a few others as well. Dylan sometimes hits the mark, not as often as Paul Simon, I don't think. But yeah, that's probably be my answer there. Did I
Great.
lose you?
How about church leaders? Do you have any church leaders who inspire you?
Yeah, up until recently, I was attending the German ward, which is now defunct. There was a German ward in Salt Lake City that I think probably about 2 years ago they finally went bust. Um, and I gave a talk about people who really inspired me, and one of them was David O. McKay. I consider David O. McKay a big tent prophet because he welcomed alternative views in ways that I was talking to my friend Ken about this just the other day. We were trying to identify other prophets of our lifetime that might have been similar to him, and I don't know, to some degree, maybe Spencer Kimball was a little that way, but I think you just can't beat David O. McKay for, you know, uh, uh, defending people like Sterling McMurrin and Lowell Benyon, who were constantly the targets of criticism by people like Harold B. Lee and Joseph Fielding Smith. And I really admire him a lot for that. And I read his biography by Greg Prince, uh, The Modern Rise to Modern Rise. What's it called? Somebody else knows that. The Modern Rise of Mormonism, I think. And you see some flaws that I hadn't been aware of in his personality, but it made me love him all the more. And like my dad always said about David O. McKay, he looked like a prophet in ways that, that white shock of hair. But it's not the looks I care about. I just think he was a decent human being, and I really admire him. And in that talk, I also talked about Muhammad Ali. I tried to make it about Muslims, Christians, and Jews. And so I talked about Muhammad Ali, who was born a Christian but became a Muslim later in his life because he realized that Christianity didn't really care about people like him. And I think that's probably not really completely fair. But in any case, he found, as Cassius Clay becoming Muhammad Ali, he found who he was, and he was just a really fundamentally decent person. He went to Iran to help American prisoners be released, and he didn't just center his help on Muslims. He centered his help on the same white Christians who had made his life miserable as a kid. Um, and I know that went beyond what your question was, so I'll stop there.
Okay, great. You know, Dave, thank you so much. It's been really wonderful to talk with you and to hear what you have to say. I hope that people will come back and hear your music. I'm looking forward to that myself, and I'm sorry that we didn't get to hear it today, but it was really lovely hearing your stories about writing your songs and just some of your life experience. So great to meet you.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks so much for your insightful questions and just for being interested. You know, lots of times it's hard you write a song and you might go out and play it at an open mic night or something, and you don't really know how interested people are. And I feel like you really took an interest, and I appreciate that, and gave me a forum in which to talk about my music in a way that I don't often get to do. And I really appreciate that.
Thanks for participating in Sunstone, and thanks everyone who listened to the session and who will listen to the recording. I'm going to end now, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunstone experience.
Thanks a lot.